I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I just became the family villain because I refused to pay for my sister's dream wedding. But let me back up because this story starts way before the wedding drama exploded. My sister Megan is 25. She's always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Beautiful, charming, and completely incapable of handling money or responsibility. I'm the practical one, the boring one, the one who went to community college while working full-time instead of the expensive state school Megan attended on my parents' dime. I work as a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm. Nothing glamorous, but I make decent money, around $85,000 a year. I bought my own condo 3 years ago, paid off my student loans early, and actually have a retirement fund. Revolutionary concepts in my family, apparently. Megan graduated 2 years ago with a degree in communications and about $60,000 in student debt. She works part-time at a boutique, making maybe $25,000 a year, and spends her free time on Instagram trying to become an influencer. She has 3,000 followers. Most of them are family members and bots. Last November, Megan got engaged to Tyler, her boyfriend of 8 months. Yes, 8 months. They met at a music festival, bonded over their love of craft beer and reality TV, and apparently decided that was enough foundation for marriage. Tyler works in sales, makes okay money, but has the financial planning skills of a toddler with a credit card. The proposal happened at some trendy restaurant downtown. Tyler rented out the patio, hired a photographer, and had rose petals everywhere. It cost him $4,000 that he definitely didn't have, but it was Instagram perfect, which seemed to be the only metric that mattered. The engagement photos went up immediately. Megan looked radiant. The ring was massive, at least 2 carats, definitely outside their budget. But it was beautiful, and all her friends commented with heart emojis and congratulations. So mission accomplished, I suppose. I texted her my congratulations, took her out to lunch the next week. We had a nice time, talking about wedding ideas, venues, and dresses. She was so happy, and I was genuinely excited for her, despite my reservations about Tyler and the whirlwind nature of their relationship. My parents were over the moon. My mom started crying when Megan showed her the ring. My dad shook Tyler's hand like he'd just won the lottery. There was champagne, toasts, and endless talk about what a perfect couple they made. Then reality set in. 2 weeks after the engagement, we had a family dinner at my parents' house. Mom made her famous lasagna. Dad opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving. Megan brought her wedding binder, which was already 3 inches thick with magazine cutouts and printed Pinterest pages. She started talking about her vision. Destination wedding in Napa Valley. 200 guests. Designer dress. Live band. Farm-to-table catering. Open bar with signature cocktails. Luxury hotel for the wedding party. The works. I was doing mental math while she talked, and my accountant brain was screaming. This wedding was easily going to cost $100,000, probably more. I kept my mouth shut. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Then came the bomb. My dad cleared his throat in that way he does when he's about to say something he knows will cause problems. He said we needed to talk about the budget for this wedding. Megan's eyes lit up. She pulled out a spreadsheet, which surprised me because I didn't know she understood how spreadsheets worked. This was her masterpiece, her magnum opus of wedding planning. The total came to $120,000. My mother gasped. My father went pale. I nearly spit out my wine. Tyler jumped in with his best salesman voice, saying they knew it sounded like a lot, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime event. They wanted it to be perfect. Plus, they'd already put down deposits on the venue and the photographer. Asked how much in deposits. Megan said quietly that it was $15,000. My dad's voice cracked as he asked if they'd already spent $15,000. Megan explained that the venue required a deposit to hold the date. It was the perfect location, right on a vineyard. The pictures were going to be amazing. My mom reached for the wine and asked if they'd talked to them before putting down $15,000. Tyler explained that they wanted to secure the date before someone else took it. It was the only weekend in June that worked with everyone's schedules. No one had asked me about my schedule, but whatever. My dad rubbed his temples and said they'd told Megan they'd contribute $20,000 to the wedding. That was what they could afford. They were still paying off credit card debt from her graduation party. The graduation party that cost $8,000 for 50 people because Megan wanted it at an upscale venue with catered food and a DJ. I'd had a backyard barbecue for mine that cost maybe $300. Megan whined that this was her wedding. Every girl dreams about her perfect wedding. Dad couldn't expect her to have some cheap courthouse ceremony. My mom said no one was suggesting that, but $120,000 was unrealistic. Most people didn't spend that much on a wedding. Megan shot back that their friends did. Jessica's wedding cost $150,000. Brittany's was $130,000. She was actually being reasonable. My dad said firmly that those families had more money than they did. They'd given her what they could. The rest was up to her and Tyler. Megan's eyes filled with tears. She'd perfected this technique in middle school. The trembling lip, the glistening eyes, the slight quiver in her voice. It worked on our parents about 90% of the time. She said she'd been planning this since she was a little girl. Dad had always said he'd give her her dream wedding. My mom corrected her, saying they'd said they'd help, not fund the entire thing. Tyler put his arm around Megan and said it was okay. They'd figure it out. Then Megan turned to me. She asked if I'd help. I made good money. I didn't have kids or a husband. I could afford to chip in. I felt everyone's eyes on me. This was the moment I should have stood firm. But I didn't want to ruin dinner. I asked carefully how much she was thinking. She said Mom and Dad were giving them $20,000. If I could match that, they'd be almost halfway there. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud because I thought she was joking. She wasn't joking. I told Megan I wasn't giving her $20,000 for her wedding. She asked why not. I had it. I said that wasn't the point. It was her wedding, not mine. I had my own financial goals. She asked what goals. I just sat in my condo alone every weekend. I wasn't even dating anyone. What else was I spending money on? The words hit harder than they should have. Yes, I was single. Yes, I spent a lot of nights at home. But I was also building a life, saving for my future, and not asking anyone else to fund my choices. I told her I was saving for retirement, for travel, for my future. Just because I wasn't spending money on a wedding didn't mean I should spend it on hers. Megan's tears started flowing. She said I was her sister. Family was supposed to support each other. When I got married someday, she'd help me. I pointed out that she worked part-time at a boutique and was $60,000 in debt. She wasn't going to be in a position to help anyone. My mom gasped and said that was enough. I said it was true, though. I was tired of pretending it wasn't. My dad tried to intervene, asking us to calm down. But Megan was on a roll. She said I'd always been jealous of her, ever since we were kids. I was bitter because I wasn't as pretty or popular, and now I couldn't stand that she was getting married before me. That was it. That was the line. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and headed for the door. I could hear my mother calling after me, my father telling Megan she'd gone too far, but I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove home, shaking with anger and hurt. The next few days were radio silence. No calls, no texts, nothing. I thought maybe we'd all cool off and eventually have an adult conversation about reasonable expectations. Then the group text came. It was from Megan, sent to me, both sets of grandparents, our aunts, uncles, and about a dozen cousins. The message said, "Hi everyone." She and Tyler were so excited about their upcoming wedding. They were reaching out because they were creating a wedding fund to help make their dream day a reality. They'd set up a GoFundMe, but they were also accepting direct contributions. Any amount helped. They were so grateful to have such a loving and supportive family. Attached was a link to the GoFundMe. I clicked it out of morbid curiosity. The goal was $80,000. The description was 3 paragraphs of emotional manipulation about true love, once-in-a-lifetime moments, and how much it would mean to start their marriage surrounded by beauty and love. There were already donations. $500 from my grandmother, $300 from my aunt, $100 from various cousins. I was furious. This was beyond tacky. This was humiliating. My phone started buzzing. Text messages from relatives. My Aunt Carol had seen Megan's fundraiser and texted asking what quite a goal that was and if my parents were aware. My cousin Jason texted asking if this was for real and if she was actually asking for $80,000 for a wedding. My grandmother texted calling me dear and saying she'd sent what she could and hoped I was contributing too. That last one made my blood boil. My grandmother lived on a fixed income. She couldn't afford to give away $500, but she did it anyway because Megan had guilted her into it. I called Megan. She answered on the first ring. I told her to take down the GoFundMe. She asked why. People wanted to help. I said people felt obligated. She was manipulating family members who couldn't afford to give her money. She said if they couldn't afford it, they wouldn't donate. Nobody was forcing them. I said she was forcing them by putting them on the spot publicly. Grandma lived on Social Security. She couldn't afford to give away $500. Megan insisted Grandma wanted to help. She was excited about the wedding. I said she was taking advantage of people. It was disgusting. She said I was just mad because now everyone could see how unsupportive I was. I hadn't donated anything. I told her that was because I wasn't going to fund her overpriced party. She said it wasn't a party. It was a wedding. It was the most important day of her life. I said then she should scale it down to something she could actually afford. She said they'd already put down deposits. They couldn't scale anything down now. I said that was her problem. She'd made commitments she couldn't keep. That wasn't everyone else's responsibility to fix. She called me a selfish bitch and said I always had been. I hung up. Within an hour, I was the villain of the family group chat. Messages poured in from my mom, my dad, various relatives. My mother's text was the worst. She said she understood I was upset, but Megan was family. We all needed to pull together to help her have a beautiful wedding. She was my only sister. Mom asked me to please reconsider. I didn't respond to anyone. Instead, I made a Facebook post. I kept it simple. I said I would not be contributing to my sister's wedding fundraiser. I believed weddings should be celebrations within one's means, not crowd-funded expenses placed on family and friends. I wished Megan and Tyler all the best, but I would not participate in this financial request. I posted it and turned off my phone. When I turned it back on 3 hours later, I had 47 missed calls and 86 text messages. The Facebook post had blown up. Friends from college, co-workers, even old high school acquaintances were commenting in support. People were saying good for me for setting boundaries. That asking family for $80,000 was ridiculous. That people needed to learn to live within their means. But my family's reactions were very different. My mother left a voicemail crying. She asked how I could publicly embarrass my sister like this. I'd humiliated her in front of everyone. She was devastated. My father's message was colder. He said what I did was cruel and unnecessary. I'd made this situation so much worse. We needed to talk. Megan left 7 voicemails, each one more hysterical than the last. The final one was just sobbing. Tyler left one message saying I'd just ruined his fiancé's life and asking if I was happy. I wasn't happy. But I also wasn't wrong. The GoFundMe got taken down the next day. I don't know if Megan removed it or if someone reported it, but it disappeared. The relatives who had donated were asking for refunds. Turns out when the social pressure to contribute is removed, people remember they actually need their money. My grandmother called me directly. She called me sweetheart and said she'd seen my post. She asked if she'd been foolish giving Megan that money. I told her she was never foolish, but $500 was a lot when you're on a fixed income. Maybe she could ask for it back. She asked if I thought Megan would return it. I said I didn't know, but it was worth asking. She did ask. Megan refused, said the money had already been spent on deposits. My grandmother was too polite to push, but I wasn't. I called Megan again and told her to give Grandma her money back. She said she couldn't. It was already gone. I said then she needed to ungone it, return whatever she bought, cancel whatever she booked, give Grandma back her $500. She said that's not how deposits work. I said then she shouldn't. have taken her money in the first place. She said Grandma offered it. I said she manipulated her and to give it back. She said no. I said fine. Then I was telling the whole family what she did. Every cousin, every aunt, everyone. People clapped. Megan smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time in months when looking at me. After the toast, I sat back down, thinking I'd done my duty and could leave soon. But Megan came over. She sat down in the empty chair next to me. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. She thanked me for coming. I said, of course. She was my sister. She said she knew she'd been awful. The whole wedding planning process got out of control, and she stopped listening to anyone who tried to tell her that. I said it happens. Weddings make people crazy. She said she was sorry she called me selfish and a bitch, and all the other things she said. I was right. She was asking too much from people who couldn't afford it. I said I was sorry I aired everything publicly. That wasn't my finest moment. She said it got people's attention, though, made her wake up and realize what she was doing. Another pause. I said this wedding actually turned out really nice. She agreed. It wasn't what she originally planned, but it was perfect in its own way. And they weren't starting their marriage $100,000 in debt, which was probably a better foundation than a fancy venue. I said definitely better. She asked if we could try to be sisters again, like actual sisters, not people who just shared DNA and showed up to family dinners. I said I'd like that. We hugged, awkwardly at first, then more sincerely. The rest of the reception was actually fun. I danced, talked to relatives I hadn't seen in years, and watched my sister enjoy her wedding day. As the evening wound down and people started leaving, my mother pulled me aside. She said she was proud of me for coming today, and for my toast. That took courage. I thanked her. She said she knew she didn't handle this situation well. She and Dad put too much pressure on me to help fund something that wasn't my responsibility. They were sorry. I said I appreciated that. She also said they were sorry for always treating Megan differently. I'd always been the responsible one, and maybe they took that for granted and expected me to just handle everything while they focused on helping my sister. That was exactly what happened. But hearing my mother acknowledge it meant something. As I drove home that night, I felt lighter. The wedding had turned out well. Megan seemed genuinely happy. And maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild some kind of relationship. The story doesn't have a perfect ending because real life doesn't work that way. Megan and Tyler are still married. They're still struggling financially because neither of them has figured out how to budget or save money. But they're happy, and that's something my parents and I have repaired our relationship. We don't talk about money anymore, which helps. And me? I'm still saving, still planning for my future, still living within my means. But I also learned something from this whole disaster. Setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sane. Saying no to unreasonable requests doesn't make you cruel. It makes you honest. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their worst impulses. Would I handle things differently if I could go back? Maybe I wouldn't have made those Facebook posts. Maybe I would have had more private conversations before going public. But I don't regret standing firm on the money. That $20,000 Megan wanted from me is still in my investment account, growing, preparing for my future. And that's exactly where it belongs.